Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back to the Moments Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi, and if you're new here, I'm very happy to have you. Somehow it's 2026. I don't know how the year went by so quickly. I don't know how it's gotten to this point, but I sure am grateful. If I'm being honest, this past year was not really a high for me. It was in a physical sense, on a surface level sense. I married the love of my life. I made my home feel like a home. I traveled a lot of incredible places. I made really amazing memories, but like internally, this was not the year for me. I spoke a little bit about this on TikTok, on Instagram. If you don't follow me over there, I'll give you the short version of it, but this episode is going to be 5 things that I want you to do in the new year, that I will be doing in the new year, that will hopefully leave us all feeling a lot better, a lot more mentally clear, a lot more motivated, a lot more excited to be alive, and just joyous. Just like these little balls of optimism where we feel like the world is our oyster. That's my goal. That's a version of me that I would like to feel like. But to reflect on my past year, externally, everything was amazing. I look back on the year and I feel joy, again, on a surface level. But when I look to myself internally and I really think about the state of my mind and the state of my mental health and the way that I view myself, I really feel as though I moved backwards. I think of the version of myself who even started this podcast. If you've been around that long, thanks for sticking around. But when I first got on here, picked up this microphone, picked up my camera, started making videos on social media, and even before that, even as I just existed through the world in high school and in college, I had this, I'm going to call it a naive way of thinking, an innocent way of thinking. I was completely free in myself. I had no concept of like understanding other people's opinions of me or caring about them. All I cared about was just being happy, being a good person, and chasing my dreams. And I just felt excited about everything that I did. I felt confident in myself. I felt sure of myself. I just felt certain in every venture that I tried and everything that I took. And I felt as though I had worth. I had something to share with people, a positive message, piece of advice, whatever it may be. And I'd say the last year and a half of my life, somehow and somewhere along the way, that all went out the window. And I'm sure if you've been listening, there's been episodes you've picked up on that. There's been just honestly a lack in episodes. I switched from doing this podcast once a week to every other week, and then even that kind of became once a month, and now it completely lacks consistency because I'd say I completely lack consistency. I lost my drive, I lost my motivation, not necessarily because I didn't want to work or do anything or create something or share something, but I suddenly felt as though nothing I shared was valuable. And that was something that I created in my own mind, and I continuously blame that I'm worried about other people's opinions of me, but I think I'm worried about my own opinion of myself at this point. And through the research that I was doing for even recording this episode, I've really, it's become clear to me that I am the problem, not others. And most of the time, even if something starts at the fault of others, at the hands of other people, or something that they say or something that they do, 90% of the time, it only continues because we then allow ourselves to treat ourselves the way that someone once treated us, if that makes sense at all. And we'll get more into that as we go into this week's episode. But yeah, my year was weird, and I'm rediscovering myself, and I'm really grateful to be doing so. And I'm pouring into this podcast, and I'm pouring into myself, and I'm giving myself love. And I think that's where this is really all starting, and that's like a message that I want to share with you. If you feel like you've lost yourself and it's made you lose your path is not gone. It's just been redirected. It's been distorted. And the beauty of kind of losing yourself is that you get to find yourself again. And in finding yourself again, you get to leave with a lot more wisdom. You get to move through life with a lot more wisdom, a lot more experience, a lot more memories. And it's kind of wonderful, if you really ask me, as someone who is now feeling as though I'm on the other side. There's still a lot of work to be done along the way, but we got this, okay? So today's episode is titled, though I never got to it yet, realized I never got to it yet, 5 things to do in the new year. And the reason, I did say it. I think I said it earlier, whatever. The reason that it's only 5 things is because I think that 5 is a very doable number. It's not saying here's 25 New Year's resolutions that you have to follow to a T or your year's gonna suck. And it's not one thing that you must do to have the best year ever. It's just 5. And they're not even like physical things where I'm gonna tell you that every single day you need to read 18 chapters of a book. No, they're doable. They're mostly handled inside of our brain. So there's gonna be some self-reflection involved. There's gonna be some just self-studies to do. You're gonna have to really observe yourself, have awareness of yourself and awareness of your thoughts, okay? So the first one is that you have to release the pressure, okay? When you have 18 trillion tons of pressure on yourself to be someone, to do something, to change something, it becomes impossible to function in a world like that of your mind. There's studies on it. There's studies that prove that when you put low pressure on yourself, you get bored and you don't accomplish anything. And when you put high pressure on yourself, you're literally shutting down your brain and it will not function and you will be paralyzed. Not physically, of course, but like mentally. You will spiral, you will not know what steps to take, and you will feel paralyzed. I think we've all been there. But when you put moderate pressure on yourself, suddenly things start to flow. And with moderate pressure, you also have to put a positive kind of pressure on yourself, okay? Not talking to yourself like you are the worst person in the world, which we will get into. That's another one of my 5 things. But treat yourself with compassion instead of criticism. When you are evil and loud and aggressive with yourself, saying if you don't do this, you don't deserve this, or if you don't do this, everybody's going to hate you, or if you don't do this, you suck, what do you think is going to get done? Absolutely nothing. So the way that I like to apply moderate pressure to myself is to, and sometimes maybe this is like training myself like a dog. I don't know. It works for me. It might work for you. Might not. Again, I'm no psychologist. I'm no psychiatrist. I am a 25 now, 25-year-old girl experiencing life as it comes and doing my best to share with you everything that I'm learning along the way. So the way that I apply moderate pressure to myself is to give myself rewards instead of giving myself punishments, okay? If I'm going to do an example that I haven't done yet because it's just easier that way. If I read an entire book this week, I'm going to get myself a sweet treat on the weekend. Right? It sounds silly, but it works. If I pour an hour into planning my event every single day this week, I'm going to do so-and-so on the weekend. Instead of saying, oh, if I don't plan, pause for a moment. It's a nonprofit event that I host. If you guys want to come, let me know. It's so fun. If I don't plan, pause for an hour every single day of my week, then I am going to punish myself this weekend and trap myself inside. That's not a really valuable way of getting work done. I think that might work for some people, but if you're anything like me, and I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a little bit like me, it's not going to work. So that's number 1. Release the pressure from yourself, okay? Just be a little bit more at ease. Understand that you don't have to do it all. You don't have to be everything, everywhere, all at once. If you guys have never seen that movie, it's incredible. I don't even think that's what it's called. It's Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Yeah, it is. Let yourself be, okay? Be where your feet are. Focus on being present. Focus on just like living in the moment that you are in and going with the flow. Okay? Release the pressure. Number 2, these all kind of tie together. You'll notice, so if I repeat a couple of points, it's not intentional. It's just because they're all intertwined and interlooped. Stop trying. This one for me, stab to the heart. It's like a slit across my throat because I've never felt so attacked in my life, because even if you've tuned in for all these years, I'm almost constantly talking about, I'm actually probably giving you this reminder that you shouldn't do this, but I'm secretly doing it myself. So honesty, that's me being honest. Stop trying to get back to something, Okay, stop trying to go back to who you were when you were 22. Stop trying to go back to who you were when you lived in this place. Stop trying to go back to who you were when you first started your job. Stop trying to go back to who you were when you were dating this person, or you weren't dating this person, or you were friends with this person, or when you weren't friends with that person, and so and so and so and so and so on. The reason that this does not work and is so bad for us is, I mean, there's 20 trillion reasons that this is so bad for us. But the main one is that every time you reflect back, what your brain is doing, and we know that this is happening, but we choose to keep doing it because, well, we're human. When you look back on a past experience, you tend to look at it with rose-colored glasses. You tend to completely distort the reality that it was and only focus on the things, especially, let me give you my prime example. I believe that there was a version of me, and this is oddly specific, in January of 2022, that peaked. That was the peak of my life. So I tell my brain. I look back on that time and I'm like, wow, I was consistently moving my body. I was incredibly creative. I was always journaling. I always had something valuable to share. I was passionate. I was whatever. Okay, when I look back on the reality of that time, I was none of those things. I just kind of was faking it till I make it. But of course, when I convince myself of something, it's really hard for me to let go of the idea of it. We tend to get so obsessed and attached with this version of something that we once were that it literally cripples us from moving forward. If I want to be the version of me in 2022 that I was so bad, like, I have to logically recognize that that's impossible. And once I do that, I can let go of it. And I can actually grow and move and transition into the person that's even better than whoever I think I was in 2022, if that makes sense. I wrote down some more things, so let's look at my notes. I wrote this, and I wrote it in all capital letters with stars around it. The old you is fiction. I liked it. I read it, and I liked it, so I wrote it down. I'm sharing it with you. Another reason you can't, even if you're not looking at this time through rose-colored glasses, and you actually did thrive in this time period, or were being so successful in this area of your life or that area of your life, you have to recognize that you cannot go back at all to the same context that was in, the same nervous system that happened in, and the same knowledge that happened in. Like, you have learned so much, you've grown so much, you've experienced so much that you're not going to be able to live the same way that you once did. You have to recognize that if you ever want to be a better version of that, okay? What this does is cause internal conflict. And this is the thing that gets me. This is reading this, like, kind of, like I said, it stabbed me. Oh, okay. I just heard a honking car horn. Not sure if you guys did too. But this causes internal conflict. Internal conflict will drive you insane. So insane that you feel as if you're going crazy. And the reason that is what it's going to do is it's going to cause anxiety and shame and low self-esteem, because it makes you live in comparison. But the only thing worse than comparing yourself to other people is comparing yourself to a version of yourself that, one, didn't exist, two, will never exist again, and three, doesn't need to be compared to, because the only place you should be is right now. The only person you should be working on is you in this moment. The only person you should be loving, thinking about, focusing on is you in this moment, not you a long time ago, right? Which leads me to number 3, compare less. Of course, it's way easier said than done. I'm going to tell you some tips and tricks on how to stop comparing, but I want you to first recognize that comparison isn't your fault. It's literally our brain's reflex, and you don't have to blame yourself, be evil to yourself, talk down to yourself because you can't stop comparing. It's not easy. It's addictive. It's a loop that you find yourself in, and it's very similar to the loop that you find yourself in comparing yourself to yourself. And on top of that, when you layer comparing yourself to others, it's just a really torturous place to be. If I'm being honest, I've been there. I'm not just telling you all these things and giving you all these tips and tricks to life because I think that they'll be valuable. Like, I'm giving them to you because I know that they are valuable, because I have experienced both ends of them. And when you're doing these things and you're treating yourself this way, it is a horrible place to live, and you will never find full happiness and contentment living in them. That's the truth, okay? So, first thing that you have to do to compare less is you have to name it, you have to clock it, you have to notice it. When you are scrolling, and I'll say it now, and I've said it 18 trillion times before, scrolling is evil. It is literally the worst thing that you can do for your brain, for yourself, for everything, especially if you haven't worked out the rest of this stuff yet. Maybe scrolling won't be so bad for you if you don't have all these crippling brain dilemmas. But while you do, it's not good for you. Speaking from personal experience. So ideally, you're going to scroll less. But when you do find yourself scrolling, and even if you're not even like a social media comparison kind of gal, you find yourself comparing yourself to your friends, even your parents, even adults, even your coworkers, wherever you're comparing, you have to, like I said, clock it. Your brain works in a unique sense that if you don't acknowledge what you're doing, it can't separate it from, it just can't separate it. So you have to say to your brain, oh, look what I'm doing. Let me observe this. Let me notice it. Let me remember for a second here that I'm comparing. Let me just tell myself that instead of just continuously doing it without proper observation. The next thing that you have to do, oftentimes when we don't separate these things, our brain will go, oh, they have this, so like I must be less because I don't have that. We'll combine those two things so repetitively that, like I said, our brain falls into that loop. Everything can be like loops. We'll get more into it in a little bit. I'm not going to go there yet. Separate the two things, okay? You can acknowledge, wow, they have a G-Wagon. I don't even really care about cars. I don't like whatever it is that you find yourself saying, they have this, okay? For me, sometimes like a really huge one is, wow, they have a schedule. They have like consistency. They're type A, because I get really in my head that I'm not organized, I'm not structured, and it like I really tear myself up about it. So that's something that I'm normally acknowledging. So I'll see that and I'll say, oh wow, they have that, so that must mean I suck, right? No, separate that. They have a G-Wagon. Does that make my Jeep any less wonderful? Does it make my Jeep any less practical? Does it make my Jeep not able to take me from point A to point B? No. So why am I going to separate the two and talk to myself so negatively for something that does not call for that? And if you can't separate the two, you literally have to force yourself to get off the internet or get out of the environment that is like making this loop so repetitive for you. Comparison happens when your brain thinks it's being judged. So, you've created a cycle. We're going back to loops. Sorry, I'm getting my train of thought lost only because, like I said, so many of these intertwine with one another, and the biggest overarching one is the last one that I'm going to get into. So, start with your awareness. Start with separating what they have with what you have instead of combining the two and putting your self-worth in like what other people have. Recognize that you are in a different chapter than everybody else. You are in a different book than everybody else. Your life should not look anything like anybody else's. And if you're striving for your life to look like somebody else's, let that go, because you're never going to be happy in your own life. Ever. Appreciate the life that God has given you, that you have, that you are living right now. Appreciation goes a long way. Right. Moving on, do whatever it takes to stop consuming as much of whatever is bothering you, which is leading me into my next one. New hobbies. I'll say it again. New hobbies. You must start new hobbies, not just because it's like, oh, it's so fun and joyful and it's going to make you feel better. It is scientifically going to make you feel better, neurologically, psychologically, and emotionally. Let me tell you why. Because when you do new things, you start new hobbies, you're learning new things, you're creating new neural pathways, which gives you cognitive flexibility, mood regulation. And that's all I wrote down. Okay, I have a really hard time at reading things and then writing them and then remembering everything and saying it all in the way that I want to, and that's okay. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to compare myself. I'm going to let it be what it is because I'm working on loving me the way that I am once again. New hobbies really, really, really help stimulate new parts of your brain, which distract from the parts of your brain that are not so well. It rebuilds your sense of identity as well. And I think that's a really big one for me this year, is that I, in a sense, feel like I've lost myself. And because I kind of felt like I lost myself, I kept thinking I wanted to go back to me before I lost myself, which is what? Going back to a version of myself that doesn't exist, that I can't get back to. So it's really important for me to just like re-identify who I am. And a good way for me to do that is through new hobbies. And listen, these new hobbies don't need to be something incredibly difficult, incredibly time consuming. Like maybe it's not even a new hobby, it's just an old hobby that you put down for a while. For example, something really big for me is reading. I really enjoy reading, but I haven't read in a very long time. I fell out of my flow, I fell out of my rhythm of it. I kept forcing myself to read self-help books, and like that just, I never finished them. I don't want to pick them up, but something I do like to read is a fiction book, a rom-com, a thriller. And I find that when I'm picking up a book, I'm way less enticed to pick up my phone, to start scrolling, to see what's going on in the world. I just want to read my book. And it might be an old hobby, but it sure as heck is like inputting good things into my life and moving me in a more positive direction, and just taking my mind off of the things that keep me so negative and so in my head and so on a loop. Because I want you to know that depression and anxiety thrive on a loop, which makes incredible amounts of sense. The same thoughts constantly are going to keep you doing and feeling the same things. And when you're not switching up your life, your thoughts are going to be the same. When you're doing the same thing, you're thinking the same things, you're not going to be able to see progress, and you're not going to be able to see change. So I'm not saying you have to like dramatically change your life to feel better, but you have to like just change small bits of your life to dramatically feel better. It's crazy how much and how far a little bit can really push you. Because once you do one thing that positively impacts you and positively motivates you, the more of those things you want to do. Because we get like real good dopamine from doing new hobbies and new things, instead of like what we get from our phone when people say like, oh, it gives me dopamine, or well, because it does. But what it does is it gives you a whole bunch of dopamine at an extremely fast pace, and then it all crashes, it all disappears, and it all dissipates. Then you feel like crap, you feel shame, you feel guilt, you feel horrible. But doing things that slowly produce this dopamine is really good for you. And another thing that's really cool about new hobbies, and I'm going to tell you the one that I'm doing for this year, I'm going to go to dance classes. New hobbies help us treat ourselves with a little bit more kindness. Because it's something new, our brain isn't automatically telling us that we have to be great at it. So there's so much more room for failure, which means there's so much more room for growth. And those kinds of thinking patterns, eventually, everything's patterns, everything's loops, everything's like, it's crazy actually how the brain works. But those thinking patterns will transition into other areas of your life. You'll realize that, oh, I'm not the best in my dance class, but that's okay. I'm having fun. I'm learning new things. I'm making progress. And you'll learn to just like reappreciate small progress. Because if you're at any point like me in my brain right now, I can't give myself any credit because I don't know how to be kind to myself anymore. So I have to like really work on doing that from the outside in as well as from the inside out. I have to do both so that we can meet somewhere in the middle. That's like the level that it's gotten to. And I'm also going back to therapy, but you guys know that. I've mentioned it before. But what else did I write down? Oh, I thought this was really cool. So getting into new hobbies can get you into a flow state. And apparently, anxiety can't live when your brain is like actually in a flow state, which makes complete sense. If you ever think about a moment that you genuinely reached flow state, okay, you're like enjoying something, your brain is stimulated, it's not too difficult, but it's perfectly manageable, but you're like really in it and you're focused, there's not a single thought going through your mind. And it's like the most incredible feeling ever. And there is no anxiety. So I thought that was really cool. Wrote it down. It's another one that I wrote in all caps with stars because very interesting. But new hobbies also like force you to give effort without judgment, like we talked about before, which is just the sense of like you're not needing to immediately be good at something. You're just like allowing yourself to be okay at something, be a beginner at something. Number 5. This one is the biggest and the most important one that ties all of these together, which probably should have been the first one. The way that you talk to yourself is so incredibly important and will change the quality of the life that you live, negatively or positively. For me, what I've experienced this last year is I've completely destroyed the life and the joy that I have for my life because of the way that I talk to myself. Our brains, and I found this fascinating too, cannot decipher internal validation and external validation. Okay, they see any say you read a negative comment, you hear something extremely negative about yourself. Your brain's not going to like that, right? We can feel that, we can understand it, we can like logically that makes sense. Our brain cannot decipher that from somebody else versus when we put it onto ourselves, when we're the ones thinking that way about ourselves. The longer that you do this, the more of a pattern that you create, the more you are slowly and utterly destroying your mental health. So much so that it doesn't just like make you sad, it doesn't put you in a depressive state, it makes you forgetful, it makes everything around you feel difficult, it makes you overwhelmed, it makes you procrastinate. I found this like so interesting because I've always known that, talking to yourself negatively is not ideal. I've talked about it. I've made whole episodes dedicated to it. It's like my biggest, most important thing that I'm constantly sharing with everybody in the world. But it built up so slowly in me, the way that I was negatively treating myself, that I didn't even realize it got to the point that it did until I did a little bit deeper research on it, until I like really accepted that I have not been kind to myself whatsoever. Because apparently what this can do, what all this can do when your brain starts running on negative self-talk, it runs on fear. And like fear sometimes is a good thing in small doses, but it also gives us this thing called avoidance motivation, which is a cycle I find myself in every couple of weeks, if I'm being honest. Gives you a short boost of productivity, which then leads to burnout, which then leads to guilt, which then leads to even harsher self-talk. You do this over and over and over and over and over and over again, how do you think you're going to feel? Not so good. It makes your brain expect failure, so you don't even have any hope for yourself anymore. And this sounds all incredibly dark because it is. I want you and me to understand the power of our tongue, the power of our word, the power of our thoughts, and the power that they have over us. Not just us in our relationships, in our workforce, in our careers. Like, we have to regulate our thinking. We have to do it in a positive way. It takes away all of our self-trust. Therefore, I've struggled with this all my life, which is why I've always like made it a point to talk about it. I tend to talk the most about the things I struggle the most with. That's why I started this podcast in the first place. Because I know I'm not the only one, and I never want anybody to feel alone, and the things that I feel the most alone in are the things I'm going to talk about the loudest and the most repetitively. But as I've struggled with this in the past, I found myself I read a book, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was Atomic Habits. Maybe it was something. I think it was Atomic Habits. I never finished that book, but I did get a solid amount into it. And it was talking about how when you can't trust your brain anymore, it's the reason that you find it really hard to finish tasks and to do anything that you start. Because your brain knows that if you say, oh, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to put my time into it, and I'm going to make sure I do it. If you've repeatedly failed yourself, your brain's going to know for a fact that you're not going to do it. So it's not even going to put the effort to finish it and get to the end of the task. So you have to reframe this by starting really small, by saying things that you're absolutely going to do. Right before you brush your teeth, you say, I'm going to brush my teeth right now. And say it out loud, say it proud, no matter how stupid or silly you think it feels. Or I'm going to take a sip of my water right now. You take the sip of water. And you keep doing that with all the small, I'm going to take my dog for a walk. I'm going to record this podcast episode. You do it the moment that you say it. And it feels silly, but everything feels silly until it actually positively changes your life. Think about the way that you slowly have negatively changed your life. You can do the same thing, vice versa. Our brains can transform completely. We have the power for that. We have to notice it, acknowledge it, accept it, and like not think it's dumb. You know, I think that's something that I found myself falling into for a little while too. I felt like my brain was so far gone that I lost my optimism, I lost my joy, I lost my spark of positivity, I lost my desire to just believe in things. So my word for 2026 is believe, by the way. Believe in the power of Jesus, believe in the power of myself, believe in just like believe. Have hope. So moving on, where I was going with that was right back to this. You have to talk to yourself kindly. You have to treat yourself like a friend, okay? You have to fix this. I know I've told you all the reasons and the things that it's bad, or the reasons that it's bad, but to fix it, first thing you do, take your judgment, turn it to observation. We've learned that this is key in all of these things. Become aware of what's going on. Delete, this was interesting to me. Delete the word why, because the word why, like say you mess something up. Why do I suck so bad? Why am I so bad at this? Why can't I finish anything? Implements this feeling of shame inside of us. But when you ask yourself what, it puts regulation, helps regulate us. So what could make this easier? What's the next small step? So I thought that was cool. I've never tried it. I actually found that one out as I was writing this, my little outline that I have here. So I'm going to try that, let you know how it goes, but I wanted to share it with you. And the next thing is to normalize struggle, but not quitting. You know, it takes a little while to get to a point where you're back to speaking only positive things about yourself and back to being able to be productive, motivated, creative, whatever it is that you're looking for or missing. But you have to like know that there's going to be struggle. I think it becomes really easy to think that everything should be a walk in the park, and the moment that your brain has some negative thought or you have some negative feeling or something's not going your way, you just want to give up because that's what you've done a whole bunch of times. But you can't do that. You have to work through the struggle, accept the struggle, be completely aware of the struggle. Life is not supposed to be easy. These moments are not supposed to be easy. We have to stop thinking it's going to be a walk in the park and then giving up when there's a speed bump you have to walk over or like something that you have to walk around. The last thing that I wrote down that apparently can help this, and I believe this for certain because I've done it, say you instead of I. Talk to yourself like you're somebody else. It will maybe make you have a little bit more compassion. I like to envision myself talking to my best friend. All of the things that I would say to my best friend do not align whatsoever with the way that I would talk, that I speak to myself. And I should be my own best friend. We've gone over that a million, trillion, thousand times. You should always be, you're the one person, well, you and God, that you're guaranteed to have in your life forever. You cannot treat yourself like you're someone disposable, like it doesn't matter what you say. Everything matters. Be kind to you, believe in you, love you. And if you have to do that by getting rid of the I and pretending that you're talking to somebody physically outside of you, so be it. You are wonderful. You are loved. You are on the exact path that you were meant to be on, even when it doesn't really feel like it. Sometimes like we just have to go through these moments and these chapters of being a little bit lost and find joy in them, find excitement in them. I think that's the stage that I've fully gotten to, is I'm really happy to be where I'm at. I'm really happy to have realized I'm a little bit lost because, like I said in the beginning of this episode, it means I get to find me again. And that's a really wonderful thing that I'm going to experience. And I know that with finding a new me will be new lessons, new hobbies, new quirks, new joy. And it's a beautiful thing. So I'd like for you to take all those 5 things and apply them to your new year. And just know that I love you and I'm rooting for you and I'm cheering you on. And I'm so endlessly grateful for the way that you guys have done the exact same for me. I can confidently say that you've changed my life in the best way. And in the moments that I want to give it all up and I want to just like stop this because it sometimes I feel like it's drowning me, you keep me going. And I've also realized nothing's drowning me but myself. So working on that, working through that. But I love you guys. If you want to tune in, I'll be here every couple of weeks. There has been some discussion within my team chatting with me that they don't really know if the podcast is like the most beneficial thing for my career, but I'm just being honest about that because to me, I absolutely love this podcast and I don't see it going anywhere whatsoever because it's my favorite outlet to share. If anything, maybe it'll shift where you find it or how you see it, but I could never give this up because I find so much bliss in this community and so much joy in this community more than I do on any other outlet. So I love you guys. We'll keep in touch, but find me on TikTok, find me on Instagram, find me on YouTube. That's a big goal I have for the new year. So I love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks. Bye.